I'll just let everything I'll let everything in the car fair if you're looking at it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Garfield Center for the Arts at the Prince Theater. I'm Lucia Foster. I'm the producing artistic director here.
And I'm Kate Bursick. I'm the managing director here.
And we have the great privilege of knowing very many of you in this room and on this stage. And something that's particularly special about the Garfield Center for the Arts that is rooted right here in this Prince Theater, in this community that really actively acts like they care, in a place where people pay attention to conversation and politics. The neat thing about being part of this community and this art center is that we are at the intersection of that dialogue. And we can have a place like this Community Center for the Arts, where we can invite our friends of the community to have a dialogue that is really so exciting because it engages all of us in wanting to care and participate in our democracy. So before we go any further, could you join me in thanking these folks who sit up here and are taking their time to invest us all? It's quite extraordinary that we have this many candidates, and Kate and I were talking earlier that there is something historically relevant about politics in Chestertown, and we'll come back to that. But I wanted to let you know that we are here for your engagement, and we only work because you are involved and engaged. So if you're not already on our mailing list or participating with us as a volunteer, please take that opportunity this evening and sign up with us, pick up a brochure, find out what's going on, and find out how you can also be connected, because in order for us to have events like this one and great art and add value to our community, we need your help. So, thank you for being with us, and learn more about us, please.
We truly do need your help. So you will see me standing around with our donation box. If you could come on up and introduce yourself to me. And what Lucia was talking about that's historically relevant is that I am a bit of a history buff, and I was interested in knowing, in preparing for tonight's debate, what the political climate was like around the time that this theater opened, 1927, 1928. And I was really, really pleased to find out that around the time that our building was being built, it was Charles N. Satterfield was elected for his 4th term as mayor. But it was only 3 years after that that a new Chestertown charter was undertaken, and that during the election of 1931, 32, those were truly the first elections where everyone in Chestertown was able to vote, not just the county commissioners. So I became very proud in knowing that this theater was built right around the time when we were starting to look at how important it was for everyone in Chestertown to have a say. And I was very pleased that we are continuing that tradition tonight. And we are so happy to welcome the DCA and all of our mayoral candidates here to the Garfield Center for the Arts. I'd like to turn this over to Nancy McGuire from the Downtown Chestertown Association.
The DCA would like to thank Garfield because they're donating this time for this forum this evening. Thank you, Lucia and Kate. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Nancy McGuire. I'm president of Maryland, of the DCA, but I'm with Maryland Heritage Properties. And we also call, of course, the Downtown Chestertown the DCA. DCA is known by the fact that it is an organization with members from the business and service community. However, we do interact and regularly send mailings to the Town Council, Chestertown Initiative, the Planning and Zoning, and the Historic District Commission, and the Friends of the DCA. And we do this because they are Chestertown, and we also feel very strongly that it's not just, we're of equal importance, the businesses, the services, and all the nonprofits. It makes what Chestertown is. I wish to recognize our executive committee, and with Kristen is with Chesapeake Bank, Kristen, and she's our vice president. J.R. Alfrey is our vice president. Bob Ramsey with Finishing Touch is our treasurer of 30, 40, 50, 60 years, is it, Bob? And Andy Goddard, who is our secretary, elected secretary, but she wears so many hats and so many endeavors that Kelly McIntyre, who is here somewhere, is acting as secretary for the DCA now. Tonight's program, we have tried to organize very thoughtful questions, and we're encouraging thoughtful replies with specifics. It would seem that the candidates have spent their valuable time considering what they want to do as mayor and how they will implement those desires. Therefore, the more specific your reply can be, the better our audience will understand your dedication to the job. The committee is a candidate forum committee, was made up of myself and Kelly McIntyre and Barbara Jorgensen and Nancy Butler. And we're very fortunate to have Nancy Butler, by the way, is chairman of our curb appeal. When you probably see her, she's probably not quite this clean, and she's actually standing erect, not on the ground. Barbara Jorgensen is serving as our moderator, and she's always very generously donated her time to the DCA as our very able attorney. And with her legal trial lawyer background, we're really fortunate to have her as our moderator tonight. I'd like to emphasize something, that none of the candidates have received any of the questions. They don't even know what the subjects are. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. So if they're stumbling a little bit, it's probably because they didn't have the questions ahead. Our time is limited, so we ask that if you hold your applause or your recognition till the end of the forum, we would greatly appreciate it. And if you'll turn off or mute your cell phones. From 9 to 10, we're going to have a very informal chat period with the candidates in the lobby afterwards. The Garfield Center is also kindly offering refreshments, and they are for purchase, and the proceeds will go to the Garfield. So we hope that you'll eat or drink a lot. Now I have one more comment I'd like to make. It's going on 4 years since I have been elected president for the DCA. And I can tell you, I fully appreciate Margot's 20 years dedication to this town. 4 years is... Only because at times the 4 years seemed like 20 for me. I don't know how she's done it, but we'd like to give her a very formal thank you and of our appreciation. Now I'm going to turn the evening over to Barbara, who's our moderator. She's going to give you some of the ground rules for the forum and also moderate the questions. Barbara?
Thank you very much. The forum will begin this evening with an opening statement by each of the candidates, which will be no longer than 2 minutes in length. The order in which the candidates will deliver their opening remarks was determined by lottery in advance. They don't know the results of this lottery, so they're going to be as surprised as you when I call on them. The candidates were invited to select their own seats this evening, so there's no specific order to their seats. The order in which the candidates will be called upon to respond to our questions will be random, or as random as I can make it at the time. As Nancy explained, I'll present the questions and ask each candidate to respond as I call on him or her. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. This man in the front row, Mr. Ramsey, is our timekeeper, and when they see the red folder, they will know they have 30 seconds left. How did we get our questions? The DCA solicited and received written questions in advance from its members, participants in the Greater Chestertown Initiative, and you, the members of the public. The questions I'm asking you tonight were selected and formulated from those by the DCA Coordinating Committee. Our selections were based on a question's specific relevance to the Chestertown business community. Issues that were related to Kent County, our state, our nation, or partisan politics were specifically excluded by us. We also excluded questions which we felt the candidates had previously addressed at last week's forum. At the conclusion of our questions, the DCA's questions, we'll have an opportunity for those of you in the audience who wish to ask questions to do so. As Nancy noted, we need these questions to be precise, and you have to follow the same rules we followed. No questions on Greater Kent County, our state, nation, or partisan politics. Nancy Butler, who you've been introduced to here in the front row earlier, and Kelly McIntyre, who's out there somewhere, will be in the audience with microphones at this point in the program. You'll just need to raise your hand and they'll move towards you so you'll have an opportunity to ask your question. At about 8:45, we're going to close off audience questions and ask each candidate to give a brief closing statement. Again, no longer than 2 minutes in length, but possibly shorter depending on timing. And I would just say to each of the candidates, we're giving you 2 minutes for opening, we're giving you 2 minutes for closing, we're giving you 90 seconds, but there's no penalty for dead air. This is not radio. So if you can answer more concisely, please answer more concisely. The order that the candidates will be called upon to give their closing statement will be in reverse order to the order in which they gave their opening statements. And now, on to the opening statements. And by lottery, Sarah Johnson Brown.
Good evening. Thank you, DCA, for allowing us to be here tonight. My name is Sarah Johnson Brown, and I am a resident of Washington Park. I came here in 1970, and since then I've lived in other parts of the county, but I chose Chestertown as the place where I wanted to be. I've been there for 26 years. I grew up in a rural community very similar to Chestertown. I'm the youngest of 16, the only one that attended college, the only one that graduated college. I am the daughter of sharecroppers in my little small hometown that reminds me of Chestertown. We had about the same amount of stores that we have here. Fortunately, though, none of them were empty storefronts. We lived in a little, very small community, which was pretty thriving, but now you go back and you see the increase of all of the new businesses that are there. And I can guarantee you I love to go home because it's quite different now. I attend Jane's United Methodist Church, which is on the corner downtown, and I serve on its historic committee. I'm also a teacher. I've been a teacher for 43 years. At the end of this year, I will retire. So if I'm elected mayor, I will have plenty of time to devote myself. I am a member of several organizations and committees, and I enjoy working for the public. I'm a visionary, a leader, a communicator, and if you decide that I am the chosen one, I guess I'll have to learn some business ethics around here.
Thank you very much. Linda Kuiper, please.
Hello, and I think everybody knows me. This is my ward, and I thank you so much, the Garfield Center for the Arts here at the Prince Theater and the Downtown Chestertown Association. I have been on your council for the past 2 years, and like I said, this is my ward. If you have a business downtown, you know me. If you are in the farmer's market, you know me. Excuse me, you know me. I have kept every promise that I said I would when I ran for the council seat. I have welcomed every new business that has come into my ward, and I sit down and I talk to them individually, and I also try to network with every business that comes into my ward, because I have attended over 10 core courses and over 16 elective courses through the Maryland Municipal League's Academy of Governance. And I network with every single workshop that I go to, every single class that I go to, and I try to bring everything that I've learned in the past 2 years back to my ward, to my businesses, and the residents in my ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Arrowwood, please.
When people ask me, thanks, Butch. When people ask me why I want to be the mayor of Chestertown, sometimes I like to tell them it feels like it's been my life's calling. When I was a kid growing up downtown, I worked up and down the street. I worked for Art Hawk at the Single Tree, and I worked for Bob Ramsey at the Finishing Touch, and they'll attest that both of them I still go to for advice. I worked for Kevin and Barbara at the Ironstone and rode my bike all over town, deliver newspapers for the State News, and if you don't tell her, I even worked for Andy as a doorman before I was old enough to be at the bar. I was in and out of Ajax and McCrory's and Leo Hicks Garage, and they were my real homes. That's where I learned to be the person that I was. That's what made me the person that loves Chestertown. It's kind of fitting that this forum is in this theater because it was up there in that dusty projection booth about 22 years ago that I started my career in the film business. Bill Frank and I still like to laugh about the time that we showed Batman and there were bats in the theater and everyone thought it was a 3D effect. When I was 21 years old, I was on this stage behind the screen cleaning up bat guano for the owner and was devising my plan to buy this building and restore it to its glory as a movie house. And a good friend of mine and neighbor, Tyler Campbell, came up to me and said, "Bill, all you know is High Street. That's the only life you've ever known. You need to go out and see the world and learn everything you can, because when you're ready, Chestertown will be here waiting for you when you come back, and we'll be ready, and they will need you." So I went out and I saw the world a little while, and I got a pretty successful career in the movie business. I've been doing that for about 15 years. But my heart never really left High Street. About 2 years ago, shortly after I'd bought my folks' house, I stopped into Sky's shoe store to say hello to the other mayor of High Street. And without missing a beat, Centerville National Bank had just closed next door. And Miss Anna pointed her finger at me and said, "What are you going to do about this?" So this summer, when I went door to door collecting 200 signatures to be up here on the stage, she was the first person that I went to. So I could tell her, this is what I'm doing about it. I hope to be your next mayor. I want to be an active, visible leader. And I'll cut my time short, but there's a lot of other stuff. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Armand Fletcher.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. There you go. Come give yourself a hand. You came here, you've seen something. This is the first time you've seen a diverse mayorship candidacy. I want to thank the downtown business community. This is my favorite topic because I live on Cannon Street. I'm a third generation that lives on Cannon Street. My grandfather was a community organizer. My grandmother, my mother, my father, my uncles, my cousins, and now me. We've been on Cannon Street for 90 years. We've been part of the downtown district. You probably see the old barbershop on Cannon Street. What that tells you, that there was a thriving downtown on Cannon Street and on High Street together. But what you also realize that there are changes that comes in businesses. Businesses have cycles. We're in a cycle now where you flourish and then you try to find out what change is going on. So what that barbershop is still there, what it represents all the possibilities that you can do in the future. And I come out of that household and I learned from other leaders. They said this is a historical time, and it is. Bill said when he was up there with the projector, I can remember being up there with my mother, my father, and leaders in the community. We could only sit up there in the balcony. Now we're sitting down here as a mayor, asking to be mayor of Chestertown. I've done a lot of things in the community. I went into the Marine Corps. I went to college in business. But one thing I can say, there's hope in Chestertown. You can grow in Chestertown. But all change is not a change, but all progress is change. That's my candidacy.
Thank you. Mr. Serino, Chris Serino.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Serino. I first came to Chestertown in May of 1992 to actually come to the Chestertown Tea Party. That was the first day I ever stepped foot in this community. In the 21 years since that time, a lot has gone on. First and foremost, I married my beautiful wife, Michelle. We've had 2 young boys, 11 and 9 currently, that were born right at the hospital and we've raised here on Campus Avenue. I joined the crew of the schooner Sultana in the year 2000, and probably the single most proudest accomplishment in my life is that I basically wrote, created, implemented and designed the educational programs that we run on Sultana that have reached over 60,000 students, most of whom are public school students from Eastern Shore school districts. Most recently, and I think the experience that ties most directly to being the mayor is that for the past 6 years, I've been on the Chestertown Planning Commission, and for the past 4 years, I've served as the chairman of that commission. And I would argue that it's possibly been the 6 most tumultuous years in Chestertown Planning Commission history. When I first joined, there were 3 concurrent annexation proposals that, if we had passed, would have built over 2,000 new houses on the outskirts of town. We also undertook a major effort to comprehensively rezone the entire community so that the things that we were envisioning in our comp plan were actually possible by the zoning ordinance. And lastly, we have been working for the last 18 months to revise the community's comprehensive plan. And if you've never seen that document, it's something that everybody here should read, where you literally go street by street, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, business by business, analyze the strengths of each sector of the community, visualize what needs to be done in the future, and literally chart and plan a course for the town's future. So that experience, to me, translates really well to step into the office of mayor and to be able to implement some of those visions we've been busy outlining for you.
Thank you. Holly Geddes, please.
Hi. I'm Holly Geddes, and I'd like to be your next mayor. I grew up on Long Island in New York and got a degree in geology from Bucknell University. Since then, I have gone through, I forget sometimes, because I tend to have a loud enough voice. Anyhow, since I graduated from college, I have had 2 or 3, 4 different careers, and I think the accumulated knowledge that I have gained from those will be helpful in doing a good job for you. I worked as an IBM programmer. I was a portrait photographer and managed a studio. After that, I stayed home with my kids for a while, did the PTA thing, and so on and so forth, and did a couple of task forces for the superintendent of schools in Montgomery County. I then became a teacher, and I moved around a little bit with it, but mostly I taught 8th grade American history. And part of that was to teach how towns grow, why they develop where they do. After being a teacher, my husband and I decided to look for a retirement place. And we pulled into town, and I took one look at this town, and it felt so comfortable and familiar, because the town I grew up in Long Island, had a high street that went down to the marina. So this looked perfect. Since then, I've been president of the Arts League. I was the first and organizing president of Main Street, and I continue to be interested in the children's education. So I'm a character counts coach for the 9th grade, and I love the kids. I want to see I believe that this job is going to be a full-time job, and I expect during the transition time that's going to be especially true. So I'm available to work for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Heyman, Tom Heyman.
Hello, I'm Thomas Heyman. I was born here in Chestertown. I went through Kent County Public Schools. Unlike many of my classmates, I decided to stay here in Chestertown, so I went to Washington College. Then I pursued a career in teaching. I've been doing that for the past 7 years. I've married my wife here in town, met my wife here in town, and we have a 3-year-old son and live on Hilltop Lane.
Thank you very much. Now we move to the questions. I want to remind our candidates that your answers are now restricted to 90 seconds. First question. The Waterfront Task Force, which is a joint project of the town of Chestertown and Washington College, is expected to release its report within days of the election. How do you, as the new mayor, see the task force report being presented, reviewed, evaluated, and implemented to the various town constituencies, including the business community? And let's call on Mr. Serino first.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that in my view, there's a lot of little things that can happen to augment our business situation in town, but if there's one thing that's a potential game changer. If done properly, it's the potential on that waterfront. And I think it's going to be critical that whatever the task force presents is going to take collaboration by Washington College and the town leaders of Chestertown. If you could create a waterfront where you had a restored marina, a foot trail that went from High Street to the Armory and back, that then tied that experience to the downtown experience of Chestertown, that would be a win-win where you not only had a revitalized waterfront and a downtown marketplace, but the two were tied together. In terms of how they present their report, I think they would first come to the town council to give their findings, but they also should go to other interest groups like DCA, like the minority communities in Chestertown, like the senior communities in Chestertown, so that everybody's involved. I think, frankly, there's been a little bit of concern that there hasn't been a whole lot of public input into what is being discussed about that waterfront. And the reason it's concerning is because whatever happens down there affects each and everybody in this room, each and everybody on the outskirts of town, and each and everybody throughout Kent County, because we can and should be an economic hub, not just for getting people to come here, but to drive business elsewhere. So I would hope that they would present it to every concerned citizen group that was interested, and then we can collaboratively work on a financing mechanism and get this project implemented in a way that's helpful to everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson-Brown.
Right now, I am not too certain that I am really into the marina. First of all, I have not done a lot of research in this area. Secondly, I'm wondering what it's going to do to help all of the people in Chestertown, not just the business association, but everyone else. Is it going to bring jobs to help out with those people that are out in the street looking for work to do? Are we going to have housing out there that's going to bring in some type of revenue? Are we going to have a business that's related to the marina? And if so, what is the price? I'm not sure that our folks will be able to benefit from that. Perhaps you guys will, but about the rest of the town, I'm not sure. Because I think what we're doing, we're looking at downtown and not so much the rest of Chestertown. So if it is going to bring in the revenues that you all are looking for, then perhaps I can buy into it. But for right now, I'm not really sold on that.
Mr. Heyman.
I think in presenting the logical first place would be the town council meetings, but then I think that it also needs to go out and take it to the communities in any way possible, whether it's going to a church or to the college or someplace to bring in local residents at a more convenient place. It also needs to go out in various means, whether the internet or in the paper, and it does have to be a win-win situation. If it's got to benefit the town just as much as it benefits the college, and so I think everybody needs to have their input to make it so that it's going to be a long-term benefit to everyone that's a stakeholder in the waterfront.
Mr. Fletcher.
This is my favorite topic. The waterfront is a masterpiece in the making. You either have a waterfront or you don't. We got one, and it's a beauty. That waterfront, when it's up and running, it's one of the most beautiful sights you ever want to see. See, the waterfront is your draw card. And if the waterfront is built properly, if the waterfront has all the economical output, the stores, and draw people downtown, well, that'll connect to High Street. And the waterfront also connects to Queen Street, where there's a national monument that my grandfather and 21 leaders in the community left called the GAR. There's only 2 in the country. You got to understand something. Those who came before us, they built this community with their hands and the vision. And what they did, they connected all the dots. You got to understand the dots. That's why being a native from Chestertown and left all this history, you understand how this whole economical engine works. The waterfront works. The GAR works. The Army works. High Street works, but everything got to be up and running, not like a car down, it's just only 2 pistons running. That's why being the mayor of Chestertown and with the history left to my ancestors and put let us go into the future. That's why I'm knowledgeable. And you need somebody who's going to be there day one, who knows how to steer the ship, but also understand why they're stirring the ship.
Thank you. Ms. Geddes.
I think that the waterfront is a very important part of Chestertown and its history. It needs to be redone as not just any kind of marina, but as a destination marina. The other important thing is that we need to improve the collaboration that we have had with the college, and this is a huge step in that direction. And as long as it's well planned, there's hope that it will be an economic driver for the town. The collaboration with the college and with the general citizenship from all parts of this town needs to be part of the planning situation. The thing that, and how they present it, it should be presented to everybody. Through the media, through meetings, it should be presented to everybody. The concern I have is that everybody here says, if it's done properly, and we have a tendency in this town to get started on a plan, but not see it through. And that can be very expensive to the town. So my concern is that we don't just plan and then find, oh, oops, we forgot something. And then the town has to pay for all of that. So that kind of detailed, like any restoration of your kitchen or anything else, I want the line-by-line budget. I want to see the exact plans.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kuiper.
I've had the pleasure of serving on the Chestertown Washington College Waterfront Revitalization Task Force since the beginning. Every meeting has been directed to the public. The Sultana Project, our county commissioners, our local government, our 30-somethings, our 40-somethings, farmers. We have had back-to-back meetings with the public. I have been to every meeting. I haven't missed one, and we have put many, many hours into this task force. This summer at the Ocean City Maryland Municipal League conference, every member of the mayor and council was there. There was a round table with all the secretaries from Annapolis. I was the only person from Chestertown in the room with the secretaries, and my very first visit was with the Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources. When he visited last week, he said, Linda, he said, all it took was a business card, and I'm here. And he brought other people with him, and through his suggestions with grants, not only through the Department of Natural Resources, but other historic preservation grants and things like that, he suggested that we make a timeline, and the task force has taken this into consideration, and he'll be coming back again.
Thank you. Mr. Arrowwood.
I said this is the last forum, I'll say it again, this one it's awesome going last. Because you get to really learn the ideas of 6 other people, and running as a candidate, gathering these ideas from these other people instead of just saying the opposite of what another person says has been enlightening and a real strength for all of us, I think. Like Chris, I agree that it's going to be a great plan. It's going to dynamically change how Chestertown looks. When you look at the public marinas in places like Cambridge and Yorktown, Virginia, they have made a dramatic impact on improving the overall quality of the entire community, if they're done the right way. And like Holly, they need to be done in a timely manner. We have a myriad of projects in Chestertown that people have not been able to really understand their purpose and understand their timeline. And when we do a project like the marina, we need to know exactly how long it's going to take and exactly how much it's going to cost so that the entire community can be impacted by that and know that there's an end in sight. Doing a tremendous project that there's no end in sight lets people lose hope in it. Like Ms. Brown, I think that we really need to make sure that the whole community is involved and make sure it does impact every neighborhood in Chestertown. There are lots of people that to this day have never been to the waterfront except to maybe come down and watch me jump off a boat at Tea Party. And we need to make sure that they have a stake in this community. So I think that rolling out this plan is going to be a huge impact to town, but looking at how it's done, how it's presented, and making sure that all parties are involved in a timely manner is the best way we can all move forward to impact the whole town.
Thank you. We'll move on to another question now. Chestertown has no formal mechanism for or even perceived willingness of the mayor and town council to interact with the business community. Examples include directional signage, surveys, grants that could positively impact our community, persistent parking and snow removal issues, and the pending revision of the town's general signage ordinance. How would you, as mayor, ensure direct and consistent interaction with the business community, including both existing businesses and new businesses? And Mr. Arrowood, not to give you any advantage this time, please.
I think I said at the outset, one of my advantages at being running for office here is that I grew up in the downtown community. And I have real intimate relationships with a lot of the business owners and walking down the streets. I also spent some time with my family when they had a business in the uptown plazas, and I know the relationship with Dave Cordish and some of the plaza people. And I think one of the main things we need to do is start again. We need to evaluate how Chestertown does business and stop doing business as sections, as looking at the downtown and looking at Midtown and looking at the college and looking at the plazas as separate entities. One of my initiatives is to start an organization called a Community Development Corp. It's a CDC. It's very similar to the Main Street model that we've had here before that's been wildly successful in other communities. But what a CDC does is allow us to evaluate our business practices for the entire community. It's also an extra government nonprofit that works hand in hand with the municipality, but also as a nonprofit allows us to funnel grant money to specific businesses. There are a ton of programs statewide that the town can become a conduit for, can become the gateway for, that we need to provide as the shining hand out front. We need to reach out to these people and say, we're ready for them. But unless we have the procedures and the way to do that, we need to learn to do those, and we need to put on our best foot forward. Thanks.
Ms. Geddes.
I think that establishing a good, active relationship with the office, with the business community, part of it is that the mayor needs to be available to go to at least some of the DCA meetings, and thereby being able to hear what the business community is talking about. But I think one of the other things that we have to do is look for, as was said, the town can be a conduit for a lot of things, for money for restoration of housing and business properties, so that they can be used the way they were originally designed and therefore be profitable to the individual owner and to the town. One of the things I'd like to see is that the town has the opportunity to get the broadest, biggest FiOS cable. With that, a lot of towns are using that opportunity to become a hub that can then push the stuff out to private people and to businesses and nonprofits. It adds to telecommuting. It adds to the possibility of internet that supports environmental studies, all sorts of things. But I think that that you have to have the kind of thought that this is going to be a broad base, not just tourism and shops, but a broad based economy.
Thank you. Mr. Heyman.
Well, I don't go out to say that I have all the answers, and so, I mean, I think that's what I bring to the table is that, you know, everyone that has a stake in the town is just as important as I am. And so my goal would be visible, to be out at the meetings, to see, talk to people, whatever concerns they have, you know, let them know that their concerns are being heard, that they are important, that things are going to happen, and just you kind of be that person that's there, that's kind of to bring all communities together, all parts together to improve the town as a whole.
Mr. Serino.
Well, I think the question was, what is the mechanism that we can create to basically open up a consistent dialogue between the town leaders and the business leaders? Because the people who know best about what needs to change in our business climate are the business owners. And I think right now there's at least a perception that there's a lack of communication. So one of my ideas that I've been sort of rolling out there in all of my interviews is that I think that one of the first things that I would institute would be a series of 3 business forums for each of our commercial districts. And they're each very different with very unique strengths and very unique challenges. There's our C1 General Commercial District, which basically runs from Kent Plaza to Washington Square. There's our C2 Commercial District, which is our historic district where we're sitting here right now. And then there's a C3 district, actually, which starts basically from Aquafit down to Radcliffe Mill, and also from about High Street up to Washington College. Each one of those districts is very, very unique. And the purpose of these forums would simply be to bring our town council and mayor together with our business community and say, what is working for you? When do people come to your shops? When are you profitable? What, if anything, is the town doing that is detrimental to your business? And what, if anything, can we do collaboratively to improve the business climate where you are located? Whether that's in downtown, maybe it's creating more events in the winter. On Kent Plaza, maybe it's working with the owner to do some fix-ups on the parking lot that have been needed for over 2 decades. But basically reaching out and creating and institutionalizing a dialogue that happens regularly throughout the year would be the first thing that I would do to address that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
Well, first of all, I think that all of the businesses, you are the best advocate for your business. And I think that if you really want to have the business that you so desire to have, then we need to have some dialogue. We need to have some really good communication going on. We need to have some town hall meetings so we can involve other people in the community to come and listen to your ideas and you listen to their ideas. I think, first of all, the one major thing that we should have is an open line of communication where the door shall always be open to hear from you. I have been in a situation where I've tried to contact some people that are in higher position and kind of was put on the back burner. So we need to have an open door policy where you can come and air your concerns and your complaints or whatever, and then ask, how can we help you and how can we work together to get you where you need to be?
Thank you. Ms. Kuiper.
Being on the council for the past 2 years, I have the most diverse ward in Chestertown. I have residents, I have the Washington College, and I have the downtown. I have the marina. I have the waterfront. I have the farmers market. I don't think what should be done. I have done what should be done. I communicate with everybody, and I think you'd probably be pretty hard-pressed to challenge me that I couldn't connect one business with another or one person with another, and the resources that I've had available and the resources that I've made available to people. One of the biggest problems when I've talked to new businesses is the sign ordinance. There is no reason why our sign ordinance has to be limited to one sign when we have the resources from other major municipalities within the state of Maryland and within other states to find out what they are doing to revitalize their towns. I have come back from the last conference with roundtable suggestions. All the municipalities are doing it, not Chestertown. I was told we'll have one person visit every business. And we also had every business come to a town meeting and tell us what their concerns were about the sign ordinance and what they would like to have for their businesses. Why can't they be heard?
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher.
Yes, I'd just like to say one thing. I'm not a politician. I'm here because I'm a native and I'm concerned. I love my community. If I wasn't able to manage or tell you I can do things, I wouldn't be in front of you. I heard someone said about the dialogue. Well, we established a dialogue. Jan Hicks, thank you so much. She's right there. 3 years ago. We have CEOs. We have presidents of businesses. We have people come from the streets, and we're dialoguing. Some of y'all read it in the paper. It comes once a month to your household, and we work hard trying to get a dialogue into the community. I mean hard. It's not easy when you say, well, let's get a dialogue, and everybody come. No, because everybody don't want to talk to each other. That's why you see foot traffic's not coming down High Street, because people said, I don't feel comfortable. We hear these dialogues all the time from businesses and ordinary citizens. The mayor has to be a people person. I'm a people person. I've been working with people, broad sector. I lived in California. When I came back home, it's just like we got a multicultural, but no one's recognizing the multicultural as well as any other culture. It's a few people who's making decisions for many people. And as mayor, I would break that atmosphere, because we got to reach down to everybody or reach up to everybody, whatever way you want to say. But we must come together as a whole, because everyone in this room has great ideas, and we must build this community together.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the third question. Everyone has talked about improving the economy in Chestertown. I'd like each of you to give 2 concrete examples of what you would do to expand the economy here, and what leadership experience you have that you would apply to these initiatives. I'm going to ask Ms. Geddes to go first.
Okay, I think that we need to look at more than just the shops and restaurants and tourism. Any business, any town, anybody who bases everything in one industry is going to have trouble with sustainability and stability. So I would look at a couple of things. Some of the light manufacturing, I'd love to get the brewery back into town. I think that would provide jobs for our young people, especially some of the ones who aren't going to college. I also think that the internet, the broad-based internet, is a huge future kind of business that opens a whole world. With the college and Sultana and the Land Conservancy and all these environmental groups, I see the tech companies being able to provide that kind of support and maybe adjunct businesses that go with it. For my own self, I have been at the beginning of a lot of organizations, and it would take some organizations. And so I think that would be the kind of thing. I'd also like to see us have somebody full-time in the town office who does promotion and economic development.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
As I look in this room, I see 2 people who are very capable of making use of a storefront downtown. Both of them that are sitting here, some of their work, if you see it, is unbelievable. So my first priority will be to ask these people, how can they come together, perhaps in one of the storefronts, and start their own business. And I'm sure there are others. In fact, I know there are others who are willing to do this. So I think we could start by looking at what we already have here. And then once we do that, then we can branch out and look for other businesses to come to town. I'm very pleased of what Dixon has done. I think they've done a fantastic job in hiring so many different people of so many different cultures. And there are other businesses that are doing it too. But as I look downtown, I don't see those cultures that are involved in downtown. And I think we need to be reaching out to the diverse community, the multicultural groups, get them involved, because I do think that there's talent right out there that we can benefit from.
Mr. Heyman.
I think to start the economy with what we have in town right now, there's 2 obvious things. Those things are the college and tourism. I think Chestertown needs to be more of a college town and not a town with a college, to be able to have things throughout the town that the students branch out and become more part of the community and the economy. And the second thing would be to have events for tourists that are continuous throughout the year, and not something you have a tea party that starts the summer and down rigging that kind of caps it, but have things throughout the year that bring the tourist in to spend the money and help boost the economy in the town until the town can grow to support itself more.
Mr. Fletcher.
Yes, as a businessman, went to college, business and marketing. In business, you have to have the business mindset. Just like a teacher want to teach, or you just specialize in teaching. Businesses have cycles. You have a cycle where you're thriving, as I mentioned previously, and you have a changing cycle. We're going through a changing cycle, and the town goes to changing cycles all the time because that's our DNA. We're growing, but we need to include the local economy, the local foot traffic. The local foot traffic will bring businesses in your store. They will bring their brothers in the store, their wives in the store, day after day after day. That adds to your bottom line profit. If you're just depending on one particular group, then you're going to always be going to this cycle. And that's what Chestertown always been. I'm going to read this to you real fast if I can say this. This is something that our history teaches us, lessons from our history, where downtown was thriving, what they had downtown. Chestertown is going back into the 1800s, but it gives us a clue what we can become. In 1898 was a world very different from today. In a town of 3,008, the business district was considered in the 200 and 300 block of High Street, the Main Street, and the 100 block of South Cross Street, with various industrial activities on the margin within the area. A town resident or a visitor, meaning that local traffic and tourists could purchase groceries, ice cream, drugs, drugstore. I get that right. Clothing, shoes, jewelry, stationery, furniture, stoves, paint, wallpaper, pianos, sewing machines, carriages, bicycles, agricultural implements, have suits, dresses, hats made to order, haircuts, horses. I mean, they had everything. So when you put your downtown out there, you got to be supply and demand, see what the people want, not what we want.
Thank you. Mr. Serino, can you follow that?
I don't know, man. Wow. It's interesting when it's all extemporaneous and you have 90 seconds. So some people covered some of the points that I would have made. I agree we need to collaborate a lot more with Washington College. As I said, the waterfront's going to be a critical part of growing our economy if we can pull it off. I think one thing that we could do right away, I would aggressively rebrand Chestertown as the gateway to the land of pleasant living. If you look, and I'm not trying to be negative here, but if you look at the average age of our mayor and council, I think we would agree these are not people that grew up in the information age, okay? Last time I came to an event at the Garfield Center was a wonderful block party they had. And how did I know they were having it? I got 4 emails in the course of a week. That is how people my age and younger learn about what's happening and decide what they're doing on a weekend. I think we need to aggressively analyze and completely redesign our website and use of social media to promote Chestertown for the many strengths that we have, a mecca for hiking, biking, fishing, crabbing, boating, bird watching, heritage tourism, and the arts. So that's one thing. Another thing that I think we could do that's not a budget buster is look at other communities like us with similar demographics, a place like Berlin, Maryland, where they have a very neat little historic district, a theater a lot like this, their version of the Imperial. And what are they doing well that we could emulate? I think we need to bring business leaders from other small towns that have had success in recent years to us and emulate their successes, because we have all the tools. We just need to do a better job of implementing them and getting them in front of people.
May I say something?
No, sorry. We have time scheduled here, so we really need to go on to Mr. Arrowwood.
I'd be remiss if, from Armand's list, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you all that you can get a piano right across the street at Music Life, so we can still get a lot of those services downtown, and Bill would kill me if I didn't tell you that. I think that the town needs to be proactive, not reactive. 2 years ago, I came to a mayor and council's meeting, not mayor and council meeting, to the candidates forum for my ward, the 2nd ward, and I asked all 3 candidates, I'm a local Chestertonian, I live here already, I want to open a business here. What will you do to make me convince me to open my business here and not in Easton or Middletown? And to a man, they said, well, the quality of life here is terrific. And that's not enough. In the modern business world, you need to incentivize businesses to understand that you're competing with other towns like Berlin, like Denton, like Cambridge. Denton, Maryland is 15 years ahead of us on economic development. They've been working actively to bring businesses in through incentive programs, through grants, and through funds, and recognizing that as a state entity, they can do those certain things. Thank you, Bob. So 2 things, real quick. Number 1, I'd work with the county to designate parts of the county and Chestertown as an enterprise zone. And what an enterprise zone does, it allows large businesses and light industry to come in and incentivizes them through tax incentives to be able to create entry-level and working-class jobs. And it does that by allowing them to count every single new job they get and get credit for that from the state. Second, I'd work with people like the Eastern Shore Enterprise Center and create shared office spaces for tech commuters, for design people, for federal workers that are commuting across the bridge. And that way, as they're traveling away anyway, they could actually stay here, do their jobs within 10 minutes, and have a better life and improve their quality of life.
Thank you. Ms. Kuiper.
Let's try something different. Let's try some multi-optional zoning. Let's see if the Planning Commission would be open to this. Instead of zoning property according to ownership, let's try something multi-optional and let the property owner attract new business. If you're elected to an office, you come under the obligations of the Ethics Commission. And as far as going out and attracting new business to come in, this is against the ethics, our ethics ordinance. Now, my office is a cell phone and a laptop. You're not gonna find too many people nowadays who aren't tech savvy. It costs money to bring internet into small areas the size of our town. Washington County did it, and I haven't talked to anybody in Washington County yet, but we have internet service that's broken down into 2 different categories. It's research and education, and then it's commodities. If this whole town wanted to get together to build their own internet service, we could do it just like Washington County. It comes at a cost. We have internet service now. It's not all over the county. We do have a good Wi-Fi downtown now, but we need to reach out through a new website. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a multi-part question.
C.
Are we still going to have 90 seconds?
Still 90 seconds. Yes, yes. Do you support term limits for the mayor and town council members? Why? And if yes, what steps would you see to make sure that these term limits were instituted? Ms. Kuiper.
Well, all you have to do is put in the town charter, and yes, I believe in term limits. And that's all I have to say on that.
Mr. Arrowwood.
As my good friend and councilperson Marty Stetson likes to say, every election is a term limit. And that the people decide that. However, I understand that at a certain point, like the meters in Chestertown, you have to set a precedent to let people know that it may be time to go. It's certainly something that I would talk to the town about. It's certainly something that is not completely out of the realm, but until such time as the town in general called for it, I'd really not use my own opinion on that. But if as it was called for, as Ms. Kuiper says, it's a very simple thing to pass through 4 people to decide that. However, the hard problem is convincing the 4 people that are already sitting that it's time for them to go.
Ms. Geddes.
Yeah, I have a tendency to want to see a democratic situation happen where the people get to pick whether they want to have a person continue or not. Now, the easy way to do that is just let people run and you elect somebody else. Implementation, again, you just put it in the town charter. But I think that that's something sort of like the plastic bags or the parking meters or some of these other things. That's something that I would want to see come from the citizens of the town rather than have it be something I dictate.
Mr. Fletcher.
I agree with Holly. I think every leader should have a term limit because sometimes you get burned out. Being a leader myself all my life, being a business executive and, you know, part of a lot of nonprofits, you do get burned out. And when you get burned out, you can't perform. That's why it's good to see young people as well as see old people. And I think the Constitution said it's we the people. And I think if we live by the Constitution and stay by the Constitution, I think we'll be all right. But unfortunately, we haven't done that. And I think sometimes leaders do get burned out, even myself sometimes. This has been a heck of a travel with these guys, you know, going different places. And I know we've been, you know, going all over the place trying to tell people you want to be mayor. But you get burned out doing this. So yes, I would like to have, you know, a 4-year term, and that's it, unless some of these other people come in. But you need some wisdom behind leadership too, because we're off course a little bit. And you need someone to come back and bring us back on course, so then we can move forward. But if we don't do that now, it doesn't matter if it's 4 or 5 years, we'll continue to be off course, because this is a historical town that has historical lines that we have to stay abreast on and go to the future with the history also.
May I exercise the chair's prerogative? You just said that you agreed with Holly Geddes, and what I heard Holly say was that she didn't agree with term limits.
I'm sorry. Well, I agree with...
Is that right, Ms. Geddes?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, I misinterpreted.
That's fine. I just wanted to make that clarification. Mr. Serino, with those clarifications, do you have an opinion?
Yes, I do. You know, I think there's a reason why the President of the United States is limited to 2 terms, and that is because you can become, especially in a small town like this, you know, I don't want to say a dictator is way too strong, but you get in a position where you have a funding apparatus that maybe, you know, you can get reelected over and over and over again. And so, yes, I would agree with some sensible term limits. I think it's a good idea. I also see this in the business that I run, and you know, we have a multi-member board. It's good to get fresh blood, and it's good to get new ideas in there. And if the mayor is very strong, or a council person is very strong, and everybody thinks they're doing a great job, and their term limit is up, they can always, you know, help out somebody else that has a like-minded views with them, and that's a way you can push that same vision forward without keeping the same individuals in office. So I would consider that, and it should come from the council.
Mr. Heyman.
Yeah, I would be in favor of term limits. As Chris said, you know, it's good to get those new ideas, that there's fresh people in, and not that any candidate or person that's in office becomes bad at their job, but you come in with these ideas that you want to get things done, and you get those things done, and you still, you know, have the approval of the town, but there's no new ideas coming in, nothing you want to achieve, and so I think term limits would bring in those fresh ideas.
Ms. Brown.
I'm not in favor of it. That's just like telling me that after so many years of teaching, you have to step down. First of all, let me just share with you that anytime a person is doing a good job and feel like they can continue with that, then why not let them continue? I don't think that any one person can take good care of what needs to be done in a town if the term is limited. It may take several years to do a project. It may take several years to say, okay, this is not working, let's try something else. So no, I don't agree with that at all. I just feel like whoever is in that position, if you're doing a heck of a job, then you can continue. It's up to the voters.
Thank you. Let's move on to another question. And this one has an introduction, but it's really only one question. During last week's forum and also tonight, we've heard many issues presented which lead to one inevitable conclusion, and that conclusion is that Chestertown has full-time issues. But Chestertown only has a part-time mayor, 4 part-time council members, and just 2 paid professional managers. How would you restructure town government to reach into the community, to understand the its needs, and to identify solutions for the town's problems, and to create mechanisms to implement those solutions? Let's start with Mr. Serino. You were just looking right at me. I thought you were ready.
Could you use that in a sentence one more time? That's a
long
question.
I'm a lawyer. I can write a long
Man,
sentence.
you can. All right.
How would you restructure town government to reach into the community?
Wow.
And to create
How would I
mechanisms-
restructure the entire town government so that we have a full-time mayor and full-time council members? I mean, that's a monetary issue, to be honest with you. If the town wants a full-time mayor, they can't pay somebody $5,000 a year and expect this every year.
I believe that the new...
7,500?
7,500.
Yes. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to having that full-time mayor. But, frankly, if that's what we really want and feel like we really need, then we need to completely restructure the budget so that we're paying people. One of the mantras from business is, if you want to hire the best people, pay them the highest salaries, period. Money talks and everything else walks. So if that's what we really want, and if that's what the business community thinks that we need, then you need to help us make commensurate reductions in services, for example, or maybe we don't have as many police officers and we have a full-time mayor or a full-time economic person. So I think that's kind of a loaded question. I don't know how realistic that really is to say, like, we need all these full-time people, but it ultimately comes from a restructured budget if that's the way that we need to go. And I'm not going to take my full minute and a half because I'm not sure I fully understood every part of that question.
I'm going to read the question one more time.
That might be good.
How would you restructure the town government to reach into the community, to understand the needs of the town, identify solutions, and to create mechanisms to implement those solutions? Did that...
My answer stands.
Very good. How about you, Mr. Heyman?
Good luck, Sean.
Yeah, I don't see anything other different than, you have to work on the economy to increase your budget so you can, it's a whole money issue in paying somebody to be full-time. And so are you going to cut back on other services, or, it just comes down to the budget.
Ms. Brown.
I don't know why I have to be on the hot seat right now. Restructuring, wow, that's a word within itself to try to understand. The only thing I can say with that piece is to probably try to get some more volunteers to come up and help. If we don't have the money to support whoever we want to have in a part-time position, maybe we can have some committees that might be able to come in and give us some support. I really don't know how to answer this question as far as reaching into the community, because everybody is out there trying to make a dollar. I really don't know how to answer that question.
Ms. Geddes.
Well, I think that there are a couple of things. First off, I don't think anybody is doing this job for the money. If you're thinking,
Let the record reflect
Nobody's-
that Mr. Arrowood raised his hand.
I don't think, so I don't know that the budget is the thing. I think that once you get things restructured, it isn't going to take maybe quite a full-time job, but I would say that especially during the transition from somebody being mayor for 20 years, you are going to need to have somebody who's willing to put in pretty much a full-time effort. I think the idea of volunteers is exactly the right way to go. We have a significant retirement community with a huge amount of smarts and expertise, and I don't see any reason why we can't help those people find activities that would be supportive of the town and its governance. The one thing I would do, there are some of the positions, and I need to go through them, I'd have to see what all the job descriptions were, but there are some of the positions like meter maid that I think we could let go, and then have some money available to have somebody who's doing promotion and economic development, which would take a huge burden off of everybody else.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arrowood.
5 years ago, I think it's been about 5 years ago, someone in town will correct me, but 5 years ago we hired a guy named Keith Demoy. And before we hired him, the town manager did the zoning and the administration and all of that work. And since he's come on, no one can believe that we didn't have him on all along. So making equitable changes in how the management of the town is run is very possible and workable, and it is about finding money in the budget for it, because you do, as Chris said, get what you pay for. And I will go on record saying the work that that guy does is admirable, and he's way smarter than his pay grade, and we're lucky to have him. Another thing you can really do is that you can evaluate what everybody does down at Town Hall, and you can try to make sure that they're all doing their jobs and not doing 5 other people's jobs. We have one of the best town managers in the state, bar none. The guy is, frankly, more dedicated than any of us will probably ever be, and he lives and breathes the town. But he's got a lot of stuff on his plate. And you can't trade his institutional knowledge for nothing, but you can look around and say, well, what can what should the mayor and council be doing that they're getting paid for that can help him out and alleviate that? And then as you go down the road, you do get what you pay for. If you want good design, you pay for good design. If you let your brother Steve do it, you let your brother Steve do it. And eventually, we really need to recognize the fact that to be a competitive town, to be a progressive town, you need to understand that these things are worth the money that you put in them, because they're the things that are going to make us stand apart from other towns and make our town grow and succeed.
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher.
You get paid to do this job? Wow. I'm old-fashioned. I believe that the forefathers, geniuses of the forefathers of Chestertown knew what they were doing. I always thought it was serve the people. I always thought that's what public service is, serve the people. I'm a retired, as I mentioned, businessman, five months now. And I do nonprofit work. That's my life work. I didn't get paid nothing. I love this community. You couldn't pay me $1 million to do what I've been doing in this community. If you paid me, it would take the edge off of my love for this community. I got roots in this community. As far as reaching out into the community, I still love everyone in this community. You don't have to pay me for this job. This is free, because I love this community. There's one more thing I want to say about this community I found out when I ran against Linda. Sometimes, it's like a farmer. The community can love you back if you know the community. If you know the community, you won't ask for a penny, because this is a job that is great. And far as the people reaching back on the council, just do your job. Go knock on doors, knock on the doors, see what the people want. Linda, I haven't seen you 2 years in. I haven't seen you in my door. I'm going to get real with you. I'm a people person. I've been up and down the street, all over here, houses going for sale. Come on. Just do the job, and the money won't even matter.
Thank you. Ms. Kuiper.
I left a door knocker. You weren't home. I mean, a door hanger. You weren't home when I was there, Mr. Fletcher. Anyway, to get back to the previous question, I'm not a dictator. I would certainly bring to referendum the choice of the people to decide whether there are term limits or not. And I didn't know you got paid to be on the council. First time I got a paycheck, I thought we had 3 special meetings, and somebody said you get paid $25 for each special meeting, and the check was more than that. And I turned around to Jim Gatto and I said, I think they made a mistake. I'd have to give my check back to Pat. I didn't even consider getting paid, but it's nice to get paid for the gasoline that you use and just a few amenities that you provide to your constituents. But if you want a paid mayor and a paid council for full-time representation, full-time work, I won't say you get full-time representation for your dollar, for a full-time work week, then you're going to have to restructure the government, and you're going to have to dig deeper into your pockets, because it's got to come from the tax dollars. Government doesn't make money, it spends money.
Thank you. Let's go on to an issue that has been touched on here earlier tonight. Revision of the town's signage ordinance remains an unresolved issue. At a recent town council meeting, as was alluded to earlier this evening, testimony was heard from many of the town's business owners This testimony respectfully pointed out concerns, and some offered solutions that were both respectful of our historic town and what's needed for the 21st century. Despite that meeting, nothing has happened. What will you do to recognize the points of view expressed at that meeting, and how will you get this issue moving along? Let's have Mr. Arrowwood go first.
There are a lot of things that Chestertown has not done smartly to address its business community. It has a long history of sort of obstructicating and dragging its feet and not really being very progressive and nimble. And the sign ordinance is an example of its lack of nimbleness. I believe that when you look at all the subject matter that's involved with the sign ordinance, it's not complicated, but the ordinance itself is hard to read. It's a little like stereo instructions. And one of the things we can do right away is to strip away all the verbiage and understand that a consistent design helps sell the town. And you sell that to your businesses. And they have to understand that when the things look good and they look uniform and it makes sense, it's actually better for their businesses. And that point has been lost in a lot of this discussion. A lot of conversations have been concerned over the technology involved in updating the signage. And I think there is a level of decorum that you can maintain and still do a good job. But again, taking the impact of the community and really evaluating and helping them understand a unified system for the whole town, not for the historic district and the upper town district and the plaza, so we can all have one big picture, I think is the first thing you do. Then you need to set a reasonable timeline for that ordinance to go into effect, and you need to make sure you write an ordinance that is enforceable. One of the biggest struggles I've seen with a lot of the ordinances that we've seen come through council in recent years is that they're simply unenforceable. And that's the main thing I think we need to work on.
Thank you. Mr. Heyman.
Well, you want to have enough time out there to get all the input, but I think you also have to create that. There has to be a deadline. You can't just leave it open forever and drag it out. So I think you have to get all the interest groups, all the ideas in together, and just kind of put them in a room and they have the deadline just to work together to find that compromise or agreement. You kind of have to bring it to the town. You don't want to walk outside the theater here and have it lit up like the Strip in Las Vegas, but I mean, I think there is a compromise somewhere to allow the businesses to advertise as they can in other towns that surround us, but fit into the character of the town.
Ms. Brown.
To me, ordinances are not etched in stone. They're no more than policies and procedures that someone sits down and write. It's not like you can't go back and review and make changes as needed. So my opinion on this is to go back, take a look at what has been done, take a closer look at what needs to be done, and work from that point. I believe that if any sign ordinances come into play, that you would have to really sit down with the people that want them. Not everybody may want them, but you need to sit down and have a conversation with them, do some compromising if necessary, and change things. We're human like everybody else. And again, nothing is etched in stone.
Mr. Fletcher.
Yes, I think ordinance can be amended and a change. We're in a social change. It's changing. And I'm looking at, I lived in Los Angeles, I saw signs everywhere. And I saw, the media with the signs, and people want signs to advertise. That's how you draw people into your business. I mean, that's how you do it. But when I went over the bridge and went to Somerville, the firehouse has a digital sign. And it looks good. And I said, wow, this is great. Somerville has a vision. I went down by Easton, every store has a digital sign, just about. So I come back home, I said, wow. It would be okay to have a sign somewhere. A lot of people want signs and some people don't want signs. But we're changing. I think, Chris, you said it. We're going into a digital era. So, why not have someone want to advertise the business so they can draw people in? So my position is, as I always said, I agree with signs because it let people see excitement. There's no lights going on. We walk out the door, it's going to be quiet and no lights. Let a sign go up and loosen up and let us enjoy Chestertown. That's my position. Let's go to the future.
Ms. Kuiper.
I couldn't hear all the question down here. I know what it's about.
Yes, yes. What would you do to recognize the points of view that were expressed at the recent town council meeting about the signage ordinance?
If I wanted a workshop with the Planning Commission and the businesses. All the businesses that came to the town meeting presented beautiful, concise, and exact wishes for their businesses. And you're exactly right, nothing's happened because the mayor wanted one person in the town office to address each issue with each individual business. If nothing's been done by the first Monday in January, I will have workshops with every business in Chestertown to develop a new sign ordinance.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Serino?
I think it's important that people realize why we have a sign ordinance. And I think this campaign is a great example because self-interest in terms of signage isn't always in the best interest of the community as a whole. As a candidate for mayor, I want to have my signs freaking everywhere. I want people to see them on every street corner. I want them to be in flower pots and tree wells downtown. Well, guess what? That looks like crap. So you need to have some modicum of quality control so that people are on a level playing field. I just want to put that out there because I think people see even having a sign ordinance sometimes as being anti-business when in fact it's simply a modicum of quality control so that we know that signage doesn't completely come to dominate the aesthetics of the streetscape. And I think that's especially true in our national landmark historic district. And I know the case that everybody talks about is the LED sign on this theater. This theater did a phenomenal job of rehabilitating this facility and wanted an LED sign on the front of their building. They got a negative recommendation from the Maryland Historic Trust and the Planning Commission concurred. We made our recommendation to the mayor and council. Nothing was done, and I think basically the can was kicked so that they didn't have to deal with a very controversial issue just prior to an election. But I do think that we need to be a little bit flexible, whether we go from one sign to two signs or whether we change the size of the signs. There's definitely room for flexibility. I think it should come from the business community, and we do need to make some alterations without compromising the aesthetics that we enjoy that make the town special. And it's a very fine line and a difficult line to balance.
Thank you. This is going to be the last question from me.
Can I do signage?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did I do signage already?
Yes, you did.
It's been a long debate.
I don't think so.
Well, please, take 90 seconds. I crossed off your name. I thought you did it. I thought I had called on you. I apologize.
No, I think, thank you. Signage is part of marketing and it's part of promotion. And we're not just talking about, when you talk about a signage ordinance, you're not just talking about lighted signs. You're also talking about the ones that say, here's where you park, and here's where the business district is, and here's where the farmer's market is. And we don't have adequate promotion, and therefore we don't have adequate signage in general. So that needs to be looked into. But the other thing is that the Historic District Commission, Planning Commission, those two representing the government, the citizens and the businesses, we need to look at what the regulation procedure is. Because setting out a sign law and then not knowing how you're going to regulate it and how you're going to enforce it is a problem. And so you want to look, especially at the lighted signs, you want to look at the intensity of what's permitted and the frequency in which the image passes over. In a few years, the only lights really that are going to be on the market are going to be LED lights. So you have to kind of know that's coming and plan for it. And therefore, I'm looking at how do you regulate it and who regulates it. In the historic district, is it the HDC? In the town in general, is it the planning group?
Thank you. And my apologies again. And to make up for my oversight, I'm going to let you be the first answer of the very last question.
Oh, swell.
And this will be the last question from the moderator. We're then going to open it up for questions from the audience. So put your thinking caps on. The question is, with a short introduction. The tradition in Chestertown is that the bulk of the downtown beautification is done by the Downtown Chestertown Association through donations and many, many, many volunteer hours. Is that model reasonable, since these efforts inure to the benefit of the town and all who use it? What do you feel the responsibility of the town is towards beautification? Would you support a line item in the budget for beautification? Ms. Geddes, please.
Yeah, I think that again, when you talk about the beautification, you're talking about creating a design, creating an image that is promoting the entire town. And I think that that unification of design has to be something that is at least organized or facilitated by the town. That's kind of the purpose of a government, a town government, is not necessarily to do all the work, but to help facilitate, bring resources to bear, organize, those kinds of things. So I wouldn't discourage volunteers ever for anything, but I think that, you know, some kind of recognition in the budget. We have a lot of things that we need to line item in the budget. Capital improvements, lots of things. This would be one that I would not mind adding to.
Thank you. Mr. Heyman.
Well, I think how the town looks to visitors, to the citizens themselves, is, you know, part of everybody's responsibility. So I think the town definitely should play a role in that. I think that the businesses should also play a role in that. The garden club volunteers. That means everybody's town, everybody's job to help, you know, make the town look as beautiful as possible. Whether that's just, you know, you're walking down the street and you pick up trash and throw in a trash can, or, you know, you're doing a couple of hours to help, you know, pull weeds. But everybody, including the town itself, should, you know, take a part in that.
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher.
I agree. I think volunteerism is very important because it let people have ownership in the community. And I think everybody who's in this community should participate. You know, you can, you know, volunteer whatever organization you want to downtown to make it look beautiful. It's a beautiful place. And I think more people get, you know, involved. They want to, you know, show their gifts, show their talents. But I want to say one thing. It's a town for everybody. So, you know, a lot of people, I had a call before I got here. So, Armin, will you tell them about diverse community? Will you tell them about that everybody wants to participate? This town is for everybody. I'm not trying to put nothing on nobody, but I just want to let you know that. And if you get everybody to participate, then they bring hope in this community. So volunteering is a great, matter of fact, it's all over the country. It's working, and, you know, keep volunteering going. If you need to recognize the people, that's even better. But let's get everybody in this new administration involved in this community. And that's what this candidacy is all about, getting people involved, and also the kids. The kids have to be involved. They are depending on us to make this town beautiful so we can give them this beautiful town. We're not going to be judged on the waterfront or the parks. We will be judged on what kind of community we will leave the next generation. And that's what I stand for.
Thank you. Ms. Kuiper.
At one point, I was talking to Nancy, and she said she was going to calculate all of the volunteer hours that had been given to the town of Chestertown through Curb Appeal, through the Chestertown Garden Club. Unfortunately, when Kent Plaza was built, the town wasn't into flowers, trees, and you'll see that there's a lack of that in Kent Plaza Shopping Center. Then when Washington Square was built, we got into more requirements for trees. There are no real, well, the entrance has some shrubs, but I mean not flowers. But hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours have been given to beautify our town. sometimes I think maybe if we had some flags up at the shopping center, it might draw people into the flags, the banners that are on the poles downtown. Could probably approach Cordage and say, we right now have a $32,000 grant for trees. I don't know whether all of them are going to go to the dog park, but they could certainly be put around the town. We could certainly find some kind of trees to put in the bump outs out there that have the holes for the trees, but they've never gotten the trees.
Thank you. Mr. Arrowwood.
Sorry, Butch. I'd like to say that, to begin with, good parks are always better when neighbors are involved. Parks and playgrounds are what draw us together as community people. And the work of curb appeal has, because we see them working, pulls our town to a higher place. And I'd like to applaud them, and you guys can applaud them later if you want to, but what they saw was that there was a need, and they stepped in and filled it. And it is then the municipality's responsibility to continue that good works. So not only for the downtown beautification, but for an entire parks plan that looks at each neighborhood and says, here's the lot that the town owns. This week I was up in Calvert Heights knocking door to door, as the candidates are wont to do. And one of the town workers told me that there's a lot behind the houses there that's owned by the municipality, and it's just an abandoned lot. It was meant for development that never happened. And the kids play football and just play in there. That's the town's responsibility, to look at properties like that and say, what can we do at the minimum to improve this for the people that are in it? Make them walking and accessible to their neighbors. And when you do that as a municipality, you do the basics. You put up the fences, you make sure the lights work, you make sure that it's accessible to everyone. The neighbors around it will naturally want to improve it because it makes the town a better, brighter place. So yeah, I really think that we need to do a lot of that. And more importantly, one other thing, I really think that we need not only a line item for improvements and capital improvements and beautification, we also need to find someone in the town shop whose direct responsibility is to look at those things on a regular basis and not have to be just sort of pushed around from job to job.
Ms. Brown.
One of my goals happens to be beautification projects. I do think that we should have a line item in the budget for major projects, basically those that are involved with preservation and restoration. It's kind of like a struggle sometimes when you have to preserve something, but if you have a line item budget, you don't have to worry too much about getting donations coming in-kind donations and all of those things like that, which most of those donations that will come in are basically from the same few people. And after a while, people get tired of donating time and donating money. So yes, there should be a line item budget. I would love to see beautification projects throughout the whole town, not just here, but throughout. I mean, in several communities, nothing has been done. In my community, nothing has been done. And I know that there are park areas and everything else that needs to be done, but streets needs to be done too. We need to beautify our streets. We need to make those streets inviting for those tourists that are coming here. Make them inviting for people that are coming to visit and stay for a while, like my folks who have to come from other states. And I tell you, sometimes they say, when are you going to get something done to this street out here? I mean, we have potholes and everything else. So yes, let's have a line item budget for beautification.
Mr. Serino, how do you feel about beautification?
I'd like to disagree with Bill. I hate going last. But, you know, I think, actually, I don't think it was the greatest question. The question was, should there be a line item for beautification of downtown? And I think that's actually the wrong approach. I think the approach should be, how can we beautify every community in Chestertown, whether it's through the line items or clever grant writing. You know, you mentioned Washington Park. That's a great example. You know, how much of that is municipally owned where we can go in and make a difference in each community? I think it also would have been helpful as part of this question to know how much DCA spends. I mean, I would love to make it a line item, but if it's a $150,000 line item, then again, there needs to be a commensurate reduction in the budget. So the question is it needs a little bit more information from where I'm sitting. But I think, again, we need to have a more comprehensive view and constantly be trying to beautify every community, not just downtown, although there are some some benefits to having a gorgeous downtown. It really is kind of our signature area for tourists especially, but I don't think everybody that lives here full-time would agree that that should always be where our priority goes. So we should always be trying to beautify, but we should be taking a comprehensive view that goes neighborhood by neighborhood, commercial area by commercial area, and consider ways to fund beautification in all parts of our community.
Thank you. So let's have a show of hands. Do we have some people out here who'd like to ask questions? We're ready for you, please. Nancy Butler has, Kelly's in the back and Nancy's here.
Am I? Good evening. Thank you, candidates, for coming out this evening. I've really enjoyed this forum. My name is Morgan Ellis. I live on Cedar Street, and I have a question related to the health, safety, and well-being of the town. There's been a lot of dialogue tonight on the business community, downtown community, and I want to know your priorities and your strategies for maintaining our infrastructure, our critical services, and other services that are critical for the maintenance and well-being of the town. Thank you.
Let's take these, the answer to this question, starting with Ms. Brown and going left, to her left.
Safety measures. I would love to see safety measures throughout the whole town. I notice sometimes on Saturday mornings when I'm down here in the park, which is not too often, but we need to do something about the traffic out there. There are a lot of seniors that are trying to get through the park, trying to get over to their parked cars and everything, and some of the traffic is just a little bit too fast. Right down on High Street, I've been told that, and actually I've seen a sign that a friend of mine has put up because of all of the speeding out there. So we need to take a look at that. We need to take a look at the plaza up there. Yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to take place up there. Out in my area again, and I spoke about this before, we have a four-way stop sign out there that people just ignore. Kids can't be safe riding their bicycles in their own neighborhood. We have that whole Flatland corridor. Lots and lots of things can happen out there because there are people who are walkers and those that are bike riders, and it is not safe. So we need to take some safety measures throughout the whole municipality.
Thank you. Ms. Geddes.
I think that when you're talking about safety and improvement of streets and curbs and all that kind of stuff, the umbrella statement here is capital improvements. Currently, there's no budget for capital improvements. There's no line item for that. And so that means you can't plan when you're going to improve the stop sign or put in sidewalks or improve, for pity's sake, Queen Street is such a mess. Anyhow, I guess where I live, you can't do it unless you know how much money you have to spend. And so without some of these things being line items, instead of throwing everything into a general fund and then just willy-nilly ad hoc, we had an earthquake a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, there are places in town where the old clay pipes have given way, and therefore the streets have given way. If you had the capital improvement budget, you could have planned, what are we going to do to make sure that that structure is properly cared for. So whether it's crossing guards or any of these kinds of things, without the capital improvement budget line item, very little will get done with any kind of regularity, planning, organization, any of that.
Mr. Serino.
Well, I think largely what you're talking about is a budget question, and probably the first safety issue that comes to mind is, can we continue to fund our police force at its current rate? That's the number one safety issue, is I want to feel safe in my own home, and that's kind of the base from where healthy communities begin. I think our police force does a really nice job. I think it's basically adequately staffed, but we need to continue to make sure that we are running as efficient of a police force as we can and that our monies are being allocated efficiently and properly. I think as part of design, again, talking about Flatland Road, those communities were not designed with public safety in mind. And when you allow developers to come in without putting in sidewalks, for example, and without any connectivity at all to the rest of the community, that becomes a safety issue. So one of my platform issues is actually promoting sustainable, pedestrian-friendly communities. And it sounds like this green hippy-dippy concept, but it's actually a safety issue. When it's not done properly, people, especially on Flatland Road is a great example, are forced basically to walk to a convenience store where there's no sidewalk and there's no crosswalk, and it becomes a safety issue. So basically holding any new projects to toe the line on being pedestrian friendly is part of the safety issue. And I think also, I know there's a lot of seniors in our community. You can look in the audience and see what I'm talking about. We really need to make sure that we're reaching out and having a constructive dialogue with our hospital to ensure that they maintain the current level of services that they're providing. That's a big concern, not just for me and my family, but especially for an aging community like ours. We need to keep that dialogue going and do everything that we can to ensure that they remain where they are at the level of services that they currently provide.
Thank you. Mr. Arrowwood.
I think Chris looked at my notes because we were very similar. One of the things I want to talk about, and in the process of preparing for this election, is I've made honest attempts to meet out with a lot of the stakeholders and people that are already running things in Chestertown. And one of the things I met with Chief Baker early on, I said, Chief, what can we do better as a town to help you? And he said, meet with me regularly. Come talk to me. Let's make plans. Let's not make it just a report every month. Let's make the town be an aggressive part and partner with our police, public safety, and fire departments, and make sure that we have that open dialogue to make sure that we're working together and they're not coming to us with problems and being proactive to solve them well ahead of time. That's a huge thing we can do for public safety. Let's talk about the hospital. The town needs to turn around and start being very aggressive in our negotiations and conversations with the hospital so that it does not continue to sort of dictate what services we get. The town as residents, the county as residents, need to play an active role in doing that. Last week, our council people will tell you we have a major issue with water and problems with the hospital. And we need to, as a town, need to make sure that we're working towards that. As far as the hospital services, we need to find ways to bring back children's services to the hospital. If it means finding outsourced organizations to come in and use the hospital space, we need to be, as a community, to rally behind and find those solutions, because our hospital service can't afford to do it on their own. And you can't fault a business that's just not making money, but it doesn't mean we give up on those services. I'd say sidewalks on Flatland Morgneck, but it's already been said, and Bob's waving at me. So.
Yes. Mr. Fletcher.
It comes down to priorities. You look at the budget, line for line, and see what the priorities are. You listen to the people. You go and put these infrastructures together. You ask them, what do we need? How can we make it better? That's one thing you do. We talked about Flatland. I went out and knocked on the door of the store owner out there. She said she came down to the town a year ago. A friend called me, told me she wanted to talk to someone who's running for mayor a year ago, and she wanted a light right across from a store because somebody got hit. Came to the town and was rejected. That's what some residents are going through. I think one of the dangerous streets is on County Street and Cross Street. You get down by James Church, you make that turn, and it's a truck there, you might as well forget it. Those are the things that we have to look at. I talked to someone at Campus Avenue, and she talked about when the students come from Washington College. It's a 90-year-old lady, her neighbor. They parked a car right in front of the house. And the 90-year-old lady has to walk like a block or two to get to her own house. That was her concern. I think you got to go to the people first. And then you look at your budget, line for line, see how we can improve. You get all the infrastructure together and see how, like Bill said, how can we make this work? I would not run a town if I'd known what the people is doing. As far as the police department, let's have a summit with the youth and the sheriff department be there and say, how can we help you guys? We start locking you guys up. That's the infrastructure right there. So we have to be people orientated again, instead of being a prima donna. This is what I think you need, and this is what I think it's going to be, because sometimes that ideal do not work in the real world.
Thank you, Mr. Heyman. Thank you. That's right, to Mr. Heyman.
I think the priority of the town has to be the people that are here now and the safety of those people, foremost. So have the services. The town, before you think about the people you're going to bring in eventually, you got to deal with the people you have here first. So it's got to be community first, citizens first. So I think priority of the budget's got to be what is it that the people here need, and you got to take care of that in their safety.
Thank you. And Ms. Kuiper.
The highway user money that used to come into Chestertown was about 96% more than it is today. The state of Maryland has gone from $45 million down to $22 million, and $15 million of that 22 was a one-time grant. I think it came from federal, but don't quote me on that. When Coventry Farms was developed, there were no utility fees, water and sewer hookup fees. I calculated all of the lots out there, and the town missed out on over $3,600,000 that could have been put into a capital improvement plan for our Utilities Commission to repair the terracotta pipes that are now cracking. And then we wouldn't be digging down 14 feet on Water Street to repair and patch what's happening down there. This town cannot survive and sustain itself on $3 million a year, which is the amount of the budget. We have to look for grants. We have to be aggressive. You have to consider, too, if we apply for grants in this fiscal year, they're not dispersed until the next fiscal year. So there's always a year's delay in getting any money in for capital improvements. And if it wasn't for the $500,000 in remediation fees from the hospital settlement, well, you're going to have to ask me later how much money we've got in the Utilities Commission.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question?
Yeah. Hi, thank you all for being here and being willing to serve Chestertown. I have a question about how do you take what is really multiple towns? In Chestertown, actually, how do you embrace the diversity of Chestertown, which is really cuts across not only class, but the geography, race, out-of-towners who come in for the weekend. I mean, I'm talking the wide variety, which is good because we want that diversity, but how do you embrace that and then turn it into creating a unified vision that really looks at the future? We've talked about a lot of the existing issues and conditions, but how do you embrace that diversity, bridge the divides that exist to create a unified vision for the future that can actually be looking at down the road of why will people want to be here in the future?
Let's start at the other end of the table this time. Ms. Kuiper, we're going to call on you again.
Well, I'm not 100% sure. People come here to visit. They come to visit. Everybody I've ever talked to enjoys the area. They enjoy that it's quaint, that we have water access. I've talked to people. If you sit out in front of the Imperial, you get a cross view of every visitor who comes here. A couple weeks ago, I was sitting out in front of the Imperial with some friends, and people were here from New York. There was a wedding. Those people weren't local, and they stayed at the Imperial. I've talked to people who travel from the Outer Banks and live up in New York, and I've talked to them, and they said, well, I said, why don't you fly? And they said, no, we drive, because we always come on the way back, and we stop and we stay in Chestertown. People know that Chestertown is here. I guess they like the quaintness, they like the country atmosphere. They know it's here, and they come to visit. I'm thankful for that.
Mr. Heyman.
I think the first step is you got to get the government out there to all the different communities to make them feel like they have their say is important, and to get those volunteers and so everybody's taking part. When everybody feels that they have an active role in the government, they have a say, I think that brings the community together as a whole instead of being kind of portioned apart and kind of doing it for your own self instead of, the whole picture of everyone together.
Mr. Fletcher.
I want to say that's a great question. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. First, it comes down from the top down. You got to recognize that you have diversity first. You did it. You just did it. You recognize that the community is diverse. Now, diverse scares some people. They say, well, is this race here and that race? No, diverse means you may have different background. You may live in New York, and you may live in LA. You may have a master's degree, you may have a BA. That's a diverse background. So we have all these brains, all these geniuses who migrated to Chestertown, I'll say, along with the local people. That's diverse. But you have to recognize the mayor down has to say, okay, we have a diverse community. I'm reaching out to not only the white community, but I'm reaching out to the African American community, the Mideastern community, Oriental community. I'm reaching out to everybody because they have to be served. But if you don't recognize that, even in businesses, then what happens is it becomes something else. And this community is trying to be a diverse community versus, what you see today. What is it that you see out there? That's the question. I see a diverse community, and that's what this candidacy is about. From the top down, tell everybody that we are going to serve a diverse community, and that's it.
Mr. Arrowwood.
Wow. I've spent the last few months going door to door in all of the neighborhoods in town, and I've seen a real cross-section of the town, and I've talked to a lot of folks about why they're here. And one of the most interesting places I've visited, I've spent a lot of time in Coventry Farms. And I was called to task on the fact that last week I made mention of the fact that the median age in Chestertown is 35 years old, and people said that simply can't possibly be true, or you're including the college in those figures and that doesn't make sense. No. The reason the median age is 35 in Chestertown is that people are moving here en masse to raise their families. More people in Coventry Farms are under 10 years old. That's why the median age is 35, because they count. And they count because we're going to have to build to engage them in 6 years when they're 16, and we want them to stay here. We want to give them reasons to look at Chestertown and say, this is the best place I could have grown up, and I want to make my life here. And maybe I'll go out in the world for a little while. I certainly did. But this is where home is. So that's what you have to look at. You have to look at the new kind of chicken necker, that's what we call them, and realize that they're not here to try to make the place stay the same. They're here because they want to embrace a new life here. And so really we have to look at them and understand and engage them as community members and make them feel like this is where they belong and they should be a part of this. We also need to make sure we can restore some trust in the lower income communities. For a long, long time, giant swaths of Chestertown have just been turned a blind eye to. They don't really exist in a lot of people's eyes. And we need to make sure that we can go in there and restore their trust and provide them the services that they see that everyone else gets, and make sure that they know that Chestertown and Town Hall are for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Serino.
I would agree with Armand that including all the diverse cultures in the community really does start from the top. And if my campaign is successful, I will absolutely make it a priority to reach out to all of our communities. But I'm going to need help. My observation as a 21-year resident is that the African American community, for example, they tend to rally around their churches. And their parishes are almost 100% African American. Well, as a 45-year-old white guy, that's not someplace that I'm naturally going to gravitate towards. So I'm going to need help from people like Armand Fletcher or Sarah Brown or Ron Jordan. And that's what I would do first, reach out to the people that I know that have connections in those parishes and simply go to them not from a position of power, but from a position of humility and say, I'm here to listen to you. What are some of your concerns? What can the town be doing better to establish a dialogue with your community? What can we do to help? And I think that's where it begins. I think in terms of businesses, we can also push forward some resources that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. We have a great chapter of SCORE in Chestertown, for example.
And you can tell us about that at another time, because you have exhausted your...
I thought that was my 30-second warning.
Sorry, why am I cutting him off? It's because we're over time already. Oh my God.
Can't win around here. All right, am I just done? Should I just stop?
No.
Well, I was just saying SCORE is a great example of, I think, a very underpublicized tool that's out there for young entrepreneurs where they provide free consulting services. Their whole purpose is to consult with young entrepreneurs or small business owners that want to expand their business. And I think getting potential African-American businesses in front of groups like that and pushing those services forward to let them know that this service is for everybody is another place where we could start. But it starts with going out of your way to establish that dialogue and that trust that Bill alluded to.
Thank you, and I apologize for interrupting you. Ms. Geddes.
I think that when you talk about it from the government point of view, you really do have to start with an openness and an accessibility. It's one of the reasons I want to have office hours during the business time so that people can stop by and just sit down, have a cup of coffee and chat and tell me what they're thinking. I think that the kinds of things where you provide services and go to each community, each neighborhood, and have like a little forum and get that kind of thing going, and this is what we can do, like SCORE or some of these others. But I think one of the other, I think the recreation department, having, the bocce ball and some of those kind of things, they're great for bringing people together who have never really met and done anything. But I think, thank you. But I think that one of the things that unites, especially with the demographic of younger people, are the schools. And I think doing I just heard the new superintendent who wants to have community of learners. The idea of focusing the town's efforts on improving the schools with mentors and volunteers and that kind of stuff is something that will approach every single family and be of service, and that's something that the town can work on.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
I'm going to look at this from a cultural standpoint. I mean, diversity has so many different components to it, but we have so many different cultures here. Your African Americans, your Caucasians, your Asians, the Hispanics, the Italians, the Indians, the Native Americans, in which I'm part Native American. No one hardly reach out to us and say, how can we help you to be a part of this community? We shop at the Italian restaurant and buy their food. We shop at the Asian restaurant and buy their food. We have motels here that some of you probably have stayed in. I have not, but still, they're basically run by the Indians. And then we have some Native Americans here that a lot of you probably don't even know about. Well, first of all, let me go back a little bit and talk about what we can do. First of all, we need to have some dialogue. Then we need to start looking at each one of these diverse groups and have some festivals. They have them all the time in other places. That is one sure way of getting to know. I've also talked to Mrs. Shabani, who works with the with the Historic Society, and I applaud her for what they did early on with their first opening. I thought that was really good, that dealt with diversity. And I've asked her to look into these other cultures and to see what we can do to bring us together.
Thank you very much. We've now reached the part of our program where we're going to have closing statements. And because I have not watched the watch as carefully as I might have, we are at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to restrict our closing statements to 1 minute. And we are going 1 minute, 1 minute.
Good luck.
You all have said a lot tonight. And you said a lot the other night as well. So we're going to go in reverse order. So Mr. Heyman, you have the first closing statement.
Well, I kind of describe myself as a small town guy with a big city heart, and I don't go out there and say I have all the answers. I don't make promises I can't keep, but I do think that it's not just us up here that are the mayor. Anybody that lives in the town, you're a council member or mayor, whether you get elected to office or not, everybody stays important, and that's kind of why I'm here. I want to get everybody together. Everybody's voice is important. I want to be visible, bring the town together as a whole, and just everyone's voice is important, so let's work together to make Chestertown a better place.
Thank you. Ms. Geddes.
I think that especially during the transition, being the mayor is going to take full-time, almost full-time work, and especially during office hours. And I will be available for that. I want to have, as I said, the open office hours for people to stop in. I also want to have an email address where if you can't stop in, you send me something, so that I am as available as anything. Publishing stuff in the newspaper to say this is what we're doing. Can anybody help with this project? Whatever. I have experience with organizing. Main Street was a huge learning experience, but it was a good one, and we did very well with it. And I think that getting people involved is something that I've enjoyed doing for years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Serino.
Well, as I said at the last debate, you guys on the other side of this table really need to be asking yourself, who do I want my mayor to be? And when I made my own list of if I were on your side of the table, what would I be looking for in a mayor, I came up with this list. I would want someone who was well educated. I would want somebody that was intelligent. I would want somebody with a wealth of public speaking experiences that could sit in front of a large crowd of varying demographics and speak confidently and eloquently without seeming arrogant. I would want somebody with marketing experience because, after all, the mayor is the #1 salesperson for the community. I would want somebody with planning experience who could take a comprehensive view of the town and knew the town's various strengths and weaknesses. I would want somebody with experience writing and obtaining and implementing grants. And I would want somebody that was intimately familiar with the waterfront because, as I stated earlier, that's going to play a pivotal role in our future. There's a lot of things in this life that I'm not particularly good at, but when I go down that list, those happen to be areas where I feel I excel, and I hope you'll agree with me on November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher.
I agree. I think the mayor has to know day one how to start the ship and keep it going on course and know why. I'm a business major in marketing, so I know what marketing is. Been successful over 20 years. Businesses, I had that. Working public relations, that's what I did before I came back home 10 years ago. I am an outreach minister, so I know how to inspire people. You can build a community, but people got to be inspired for hope. And we went to the elementary school 2 days ago. Bill he arranged it for us. We met the 4th and 5th graders, and we asked this question, who wants to be mayor? And they raised their hand, and they went around and said why they want to be mayor. I went back Friday with the same kids. Bill said, you have them squirming. Thursday, I saw those same kids. They said, you did a good job. It was a black kid, 2 white kids, and an Oriental kid. And I shook their hands. And the Oriental kid was shaking Miss Reba, 100 years old. And he did me like this. He stood in front of me. He said, you did a good job. He dapped me. Just like that. See, you got to understand the multicultural.
Mr. Fletcher. Mr.
I just want to say, that's what a mayor has to do. Reach all the way down to the kids.
Mr. Arrowwood.
I believe that the next mayor of Chestertown has to be an active, engaged, and visible leader in the community. I also believe that the mayor's job is a full-time job, no matter what they tell you what the pay is. You need to be really available all the time. I tell my kids when I'm coaching baseball that the coach's job doesn't end when we leave the ball field. You're always the coach of those kids. And the mayor's job doesn't end at town hall. You are always the mayor no matter where you go, in this town, in other towns, and anywhere you represent the town of Chestertown. And that's an amazingly important job. Thank you, Bob. The next mayor really has to bring some cohesion to the business community and the entire community. You can't leave anyone out. We need to be actively engaging and healing the divides that are in this town. And as mayor, I really hope to make sure that businesses, both downtown and uptown, and that the residents from the western corners of Coventry Farms to the historic district along the Chester to Calvert and College Heights to the northern homes on Morgan Neck Road are engaged stakeholders in making Chestertown a better place to work and do business and live and do the living and dying and breathing here, and that we can be proud to call this place, as I do, our home.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kuiper.
The town of Chestertown, as well as any other municipality, any other state, any other county, any other government agency is a business. It needs to be run by a business. Government doesn't make money, it spends your money. Therefore, it needs to be responsible. Every morning when the town office doors open at 9 o'clock, they're opening their business. They're opening their business to you, the residents and the businesses of Chestertown. I believe that everybody should be treated equally when you come in to open a business. I believe everybody should be given the same respect. And I've done this for the past 2 years. I have not turned my back on any business. I have not turned my back on any resident. I have answered either indirectly or directly and followed up with every concern of every constituent and every business in my ward. I want to do this fourfold, and I'd love to be your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
I chose Chestertown to live and to raise my 2 children, and now I'm raising 4 grandchildren. So I want to be able to make a difference here. I want my grandchildren to feel proud of the place in which they live and to be a part of their community, not just now, but later on. My grandson, who is out in the audience, pretty much speaks for himself. I don't know whether he has followed me or whether he has followed himself. But I want the other grandchildren to be just as profitable as he is. So I want to make the best of Chestertown for everybody through job opportunities, events, beautification, town hall meetings, diversity, affordable housing, affordable health care, recreation, and supporting all of the businesses. I too would like to be your next mayor.
Thank you. You have not heard the last word from our panel because we are going to invite them to stay and have a little meet and greet with us out in the lobby. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce the Vice President of the DCA, Kristen Owen.
I don't want to make any sort of formal presentation to anybody. I just want to thank our audience for their participation and thank you for your input in helping to formulate these questions. Thank you to Madam Moderator, Barbara Jorgensen, and Bob Ramsey for keeping us running smoothly and efficiently. And thanks to the Garfield staff for hosting us and staying out late for us. And thanks to our candidates for making the time to be here. And thanks for enduring our questions. And hopefully it was something new and everybody learned a little bit more about them. So please join us and buy refreshments to benefit the Garfield. And good night.